numerous acts, it's hard for the jury to follow along, while you're giving your criminal information. So when the prosecutor comes before the grand jury, he has to include a section in his complaint, his presentment. It's called the essential nature of the offense. He's not naming specific people, specific events, and specific facts of the instant case. He's just describing the strategy and tactics and the goals of the conspiracy. Okay, and that document that I included in there, called the essential nature of the offense, this is what the Democrats and Republicans, the Bar Association, and the Blue Wall of Silence have done. And and this is why I tell people, they want to go in and they want to sue the little lowdown. Well, okay, number one, when you sue, when you're suing a government agency, you're saying the taxpayers are liable because they hired this person to commit a crime from within their office. And we all know that's not the case. Nowhere in the statutes, in their contracts, does it say you may deprive a protected right, that you may commit an offense, whether it's a tort or a crime. Okay? Nowhere does it authorize that. They do not have jurisdiction to commit crimes and torts from within their office. And that is why it's not official capacity. It's not fair to the taxpayers. It's not fair to the state. The government is our child. The government itself is the object of the crime in this case. That's what the Democrats and Republicans are doing. They are stealing the government, literally. What are computer programs made out of?
Zeros and ones.
Okay, there's zeros and ones. There's all different kinds of syntax that we can use for making computer programs, but it's a four-letter word. What are all computer programs constructed of?
Code.
Correct. And what is our statutory information system?
It's all code.
Constructed of?
Right, code.
It's all code. So, just like someone can go into a computer program and insert malicious code that undermines the intent and purpose of the code, causes it to malfunction, and disables security features. Hacking, okay?
Right. So they're hacking a malware.
It's being done to this,
They're basically, the agent is hacking malware.
Right. He is inserting malicious code, or what is referred to as an artifice of subversion, into the information system to cause the information system to malfunction, disable security features, conceal his presence, and conceal his exit, his escape, and shield him from discovery. And that is exactly what the Democratic and Republican parties and the Bar Association have done. They are making, applying, and practicing law in such fashion as to undermine the intent and purpose of the law, and that is a crime. According to Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia, may he rest in peace. When Scalia said that, not long after that, he died under mysterious circumstances.
Right.
Do you know the story of the Seditious Organizations Act?
I don't.
Okay, so this is back in LBJ, during that whole Red Fear, when we were all like, the Democrats and Republicans are like, hey, everybody needs to hate communists because they're communists. And they wanted to go after all of the pro-communism people here in the United States, and socialists and liberals, because a lot of your liberal and socialist ideas are also shared by communists. To be communist is not to be a criminal, and that's what they were trying to convince the public. And they wanted the public to start turning each other in, for their liberal or socialist ideas. It's exactly what the Nazis did in World War II, inside Germany. They turned the people against themselves and made them hunt each other for harmless activity, and turned them into the Nazis, and before you know it, they're dead. And that's exactly what they were doing then with the Seditious Organizations Act. And so the Seditious Organizations Act, if you read 18 U.S.C. Section 2384, it goes into detail about prosecuting 2384, and it talks about the modus operandi of seditious organizations and all of this, but they kept calling out communists throughout the whole thing, saying that if they do certain things, if they wear certain things, if they disable the government from enforcing the law, if they seek to do so, by thought or expression, well, then you've violated the act. But then shortly after, they made it law. It passed Congress. Because Congress is infested with Democrats and Republicans.
Right.
And so, of course, it became law, but then shortly after it became law, they realized they were describing themselves. And so they ruled it unconstitutional.
Well,
so,
that's like the police. The police investigating themselves and finding themselves justified.
Right. Creating, steering criminal information away from the district attorney and grand jury of proper jurisdiction. I went up to a sheriff's department clerk. And I told her, I said, "Yes, ma'am, I need some criminal complaint forms. I gotta issue some criminal complaints." She says, "Well, what are you issuing criminal? Who are you reporting?" I said, "A couple of your deputies." She said, "Oh, I have just what you need." And she gave me an internal affairs complaint form. And I looked at her, I said, "Ma'am, who told you to give me this?" I said, "Because as far as I can tell, nowhere in the criminal code, the rules of criminal procedure, does it say that you are to steer criminal information away from the district attorney and grand jury. In fact, clerks have no discretion or jurisdiction to decide anything. That's why you're a clerk." Okay? "I want to know who told you to give me this." "Oh, that was Sheriff Greg Hagwood." This was in California. I says, "Well, then I'm going to need an extra criminal complaint form from Mr. Hagwood for subversive activity and tampering with victims, witnesses, and informants, and unlawfully converting you into an instrument of crime." So what are you talking about? That doesn't sound right. I said, "Ma'am, can you please show me where in the rules of criminal procedure, the administrative code or government code, it says, number one, you have jurisdiction to decide whether or not the DA or the grand jury will prosecute a matter. I can save you some time and tell you it does not exist." Okay. I said, you need to give me the criminal complaint form. "But we have a local policy." I said, "Ma'am, you need to stop talking because you just confessed to a criminal violation of 18 U.S.C. Section 242. You actually cited the statute that you're using to commit a crime. Don't do it anymore. Give me the criminal complaint form." She said, "I don't know what to do. I've got to go call the lieutenant." So she got the lieutenant. "Lieutenant, I'm going to need you to take this clerk into custody and remove her gun and badge and take her before the magistrate. I'll meet you at the magistrate's court." And I said, "Or you can make her do her job." And he wouldn't do either of them. Okay, that's blue wall of silence. The blue wall of silence back in the 70s and 80s, the feds got wind of police agencies being infested with criminal organizations that were doing all of the heinous shit, all of it that cartels do.
Right.
And they were doing it via the unlawful conversion of really the entire law enforcement branch of jurisdictions into instruments of crime. And so they decided to do a very broad investigation in several jurisdictions, and they found out that yes, indeed, we do in fact have a surreptitious criminal organization operating from within law enforcement branches. And the Supreme Court, if you get on Google Scholar, select federal cases, put blue wall of silence in quotations, you'll see the cases. You'll see the cases. And, through those cases, the court basically determined that, number one, blue wall of silence agents are very difficult to detect. The only time you will be able to effectively make an accusation that someone is in fact a blue wall of silence agent is when they shield another official from prosecution. That's where the word silence comes from in the name. Okay. It's called omerta, O-M-E-R-T-A. And it's a very old practice that's been going on since before the United States existed, and that's where, officials keep their mouths shut about each other, and they shield each other from prosecution. It's called omerta. And so until someone does that, you go to an officer, yes, sir, Mr. Policeman or Mr. Judge, I have a criminal complaint against one of your coworkers, okay, or against another official. And he looks at it and he says, I don't see anything wrong here, or he says, don't show me that. That's willful blindness or purposeful avoidance. 18 U.S.C. Section 1028, as referred to by Criminal Resource Manual, Section 1510. When you read 1028, you're going to think, how does this apply? Well, go read CRM 1510, and it describes how that applies. Willful blindness, because you got to understand that all of these people have a contract with the state, okay? Their oath is a security. Their oath is a security. Otherwise, there's no point in making the oath.
Right.
Okay? The oath is the evidence of the trust. Okay? And so it applies when, and their contract is to the state, and the state's responsibility and liability, their duty is to uphold the Constitution, enforce the law for the interest of the people. That's what their duty is. So if they subvert that, they are in breach of a security. Okay, and that's why 1028 applies. And I've looked into the prosecutions, of willful blindness, purposeful avoidance, and yeah, that's how it applies. And it's a criminal state of mind when they do that. So 90% of the cases, 99% of the cases that I look at, that I help folks with, they're using a playbook. It's the same thing. It's like, at this point, I could do it with my hands tied behind my back, because they're not creative. They think they're smart and clever and cunning, but 1,000 motherfuckers before them did the same thing and got caught. A lot of times I'll have people carry, how many cases have you successfully won in the court? And I tell them 0. Now what? You don't want to hear anything I have to say? Don't look outside yourself for a leader. Every single statute on the books had the very first person that successfully prosecuted something. And every statute on the books is an example of numerous cases that were successfully prosecuted. Do not look to each other as the guiding light, because nothing will ever change. Nothing will ever change. We will never get new precedents set in record.
Right.
Like if you're in a state, and let's say they don't have a reckless endangerment statute. Okay, well at the federal level, the only reckless endangerment statute is in the Native American Code, or what they call the Indian Code, 25 CFR 11.401. Okay, so according to the Democrats and Republicans who are legislators, only Native Americans can recklessly endanger someone. According to several states, or I can't remember if it was Texas, which state it was, unless you throw a rock off of a bridge, you're not committing reckless endangerment. These are examples of statutory information system subversion via the insertion of artifices of subversion, where legislators convert their lawmaking offices into what are called subversion incubators. The military knows all about this stuff. And this is a significant threat to national security, and the threat is real. That's according to the Naval Space and Communications Command Center in Charleston, South Carolina. And so, in order for you, all these people, all these families, you've got to attack the strategy. The first thing is private prosecution. You're never going to get a fair trial against agents for the bar, the blue wall, or the political parties when they run the courts. It's never going to happen. That's the very first thing you've got to do. You've got to stand on that fundamental first right to defend the centralmost principle of the First Amendment, and that is that you are the master. Okay? Masters don't look for leaders. Masters don't wait for somebody else to set an example. They master their servants. And if you don't have the right to investigate, request indictments against, prosecute, and punish your servants, you're not the master.
Right.
Period. End of story. Only the master has the power to punish. Okay? And when our public servants punish, they punish on our behalf, on behalf of the master. So this is why I tell people, if you go into any jurisdiction and you get evidence that 2 or more agents for the blue wall of silence, meaning that an official has shielded another official from prosecution, and maybe one of those officials is a member of the Bar Association, now you have seditious conspiracy, and it implicates the blue wall and the bar. And then if another agent for the bar says, hey, but there's a statute over here that says they can do this. Okay, well, there's proof right there, because you got a second agent for the Bar Association corruptly disabling the government from enforcing the law by tampering with victims, witnesses, and informants and defrauding the court under color of law. They're using the statute. They cited the statute. Well, anytime somebody says, well, no, the law says that I can do this, well, can you please provide me that statute at this time? Okay? Can you please show me where in the criminal code it says that you can do that? Can you show me where in the rules of criminal procedure it says that this is what you're supposed to do? Because I can't find it. Okay? And you're giving me fraudulent legal advice. You're citing law, you're making decisions, and you're influencing my legal decisions. That's practicing law. Okay? You walk up to a cop, you say, hey, I got a criminal complaint for you. He says, let me see that, right? He says, I don't want to see that. That's not a crime. That's a tort. You need to go hire an attorney. Sir, are all attorneys members of the Bar Association? Yes. He says, so you're advertising for the Bar Association now? That's an unlawful conversion for commercial purposes. Advertisement. Okay? He's telling you, you need to go hire and make a private contract with a member of the Bar Association. That's monopoly under color of law, the Sherman Act. That's exactly what the Democrats and Republicans did. They violated the KKK Act, deprivations of rights under color of law, committed major fraud, 18 U.S.C. Section 1031, against the United States, and usurped the judicial branch of government for the purpose of monopolizing the practice of law and disabling the government from enforcing the law. And that's exactly what's happening here.
On a huge scale.
On a huge scale. I mean, they have screwed with the federal code. They've screwed with the federal code to do that. This is exactly what the bar was doing at the time of the Revolution. This is what the Confederates were doing in the Confederate South. They were making, applying, and practicing law in such fashion as to deprive protected rights and support and affect felonious crimes and crimes against humanity. These were international laws. The Democrats and Republicans, I can't count how many examples of unlawful conversion of United States government and military property and money into instruments of international crime. If they sent one dime to Likud in Israel, which they have, all of those Palestinians being slaughtered, they're being slaughtered with United States military equipment.
Right.
And we've been sending them billions of dollars. I say we have, no, the Democrats and Republicans have. Okay? The Democrats and Republicans, let's see, I think from Clinton forward, all of them have refused to make the United States a complete signatory to the UN and ratify the Rome Statute because they are shielding each other from prosecution. They know, the Democrats and Republicans know, that the minute that the United States ratifies the Rome Statute, their organizations are going down. And there's a good chance some of them are going to hang. Okay? Because that's what the prior court did. Not just because it's my opinion, okay? That's what happened in the Nuremberg trials when they tried the Nazis for all of their crimes against humanity, for all of their genocidal activity, for all of the crimes they committed against their own governments. That's not my opinion. That is a historical fact that some of them were put before firing squads. So, I want to touch on our little conversation yesterday, and you make me really nervous, okay? And you said to me, talking about, judges and whatnot committing treason and them going to the gallows, okay? You need to learn to think like a prosecutor, and you need to approach every circumstance you ever think about as a prosecutor. And the number one job of a prosecutor is to protect the due process rights and equal protection rights of the defendant. Okay? The minute he does not do that, he loses the case, and he exposes himself to removal from office or maybe going to jail. Okay? And it was just like I was saying, I know people personally who have made these kinds of statements. They let their emotions and their biases and their anger, albeit justified, they let it run away with them. And the next thing you know, they have violated the first rule of war, against their own interests. And the first rule of war is do not warn the enemy. Do not give him a target to strike at. Do not correct his mistakes. Let him make his mistakes and then use his mistakes against him. And do not let him make the same mistake twice before you take action. And when you strike with the suddenness of lightning and the irresistible force of thunder. That means you come out of left field at him. He never saw it coming.
Right.
So, and like I said, I've known people who have made statements about the treasonous activity of judges, not judges, but members of the bar acting as judges, and they put them in prison for it. And a couple of them, I was actually talking to them before this happened. I was telling them, keep your fucking mouth shut. Stay the fuck off of social media. Conduct your First Amendment audit, collect the evidence of official crime, and then conduct your due process audit. The due process audit is where you have collected evidence of official crime, and then you go report it to the most corrupt motherfuckers you can find, with the expectation that they're going to shield their buddy from prosecution. And now you've started taking down the criminal organization operating within the government. That's why Ulysses S. Grant and Congress passed the Three Forces Act, what we now call the KKK Act. 18 U.S.C. Section 241, conspiracy against rights, 242, deprivations of rights under color of law, and 42 U.S.C. 1986, which is action for neglect to prevent. If you go to a sheriff, Mr. Sheriff, I tried to report a crime to your deputy, and your deputy is shielding these criminals from prosecution. And the sheriff says, well, he's a good boy, he's my cadet, he's my favorite, cadet of the month, and my best advice is you do what he says. And then the sheriff does not intervene. You got him. 42 U.S.C. 1986, you can take him right to federal court for neglect to prevent. He is not intervening and directing his lower officers to conduct themselves lawfully. Okay, and if you go to the Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division, official misconduct page, scroll down to the bottom where it says neglect to intervene. That is official misconduct. 42 U.S.C. 1986 specifically addresses that.
Awesome.
So I see a lot of these people doing First Amendment audits on YouTube. 99% of them are not done correctly, and they're certainly not motivated for the right reasons. And they don't know what the fuck to do with it once they get it. If you do not follow a First Amendment audit immediately with a due process audit, there was no point in doing it. You're just wasting your time and theirs. And I see a lot of these people doing it just because they're malicious towards cops. There are good people in our government.
Oh, for sure.
There are a lot of good people. And I saw one where these two guys walked up to a female cop who was just doing security for a convention center or something like that. And they walked up to her, shoved the camera in her face, and just started grilling her about the law and the Constitution, knowing that she's not an attorney, knowing that she's never been to fucking law school, just to make her look like a fool, and just to get an emotional reaction out of her. And by the time they were done with this poor girl, she was in tears. Because she felt ignorant, because she did not know the law. That's not her fault. That's not her fault, She met the requirements to get the job, and she's just there doing her job peacefully. And these people come up and they just wanted to hurt her, Or maybe they were hoping that she would get angry and give them a reason to sue her and remove her from office, And that's not the point of the due process audit. That's not the point of a First Amendment audit. I mean, I would argue that it's harassment. They are interfering with a public official at that point. And and I've seen legislation, that local jurisdictions will try to put forward and say, well, if you film the cops, you're harassing the cops. We cannot have our cops being harassed, and that's a true statement. We cannot tolerate our innocent public officials being harassed or being baited to incriminate themselves. And unless you have reason to believe that they are actually a corrupt official, well, you have to presume that they're innocent, just like you expect that.
Right.
I expect a presumption of innocence. So we should honor and respect our public servants in the same regard that we want to be honored and respected. That's fair. That's constitutionalism. A lot of people say, well, Constitution is about defending my rights, and I'm going to defend the Constitution by defending my rights. And that's not true. That's false. Constitutionalism is not about defending your rights. Constitutionalism is about defending the rights of others mutually. If my neighbors, if their rights are not upheld, I'm not safe. That's how that works. I used to be a FEMA inspector. I can tell you right now, the higher the level of poverty in a community, the high and the average desperation per household, the higher the crime rate. Okay?
Right.
I want everyone to have their basic essential needs. I want everyone to have their rights protected so that they do not resort to crime. Because that's the human animal. When we don't have what we need and we feel threatened, we turn into a cornered wild animal.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So, there's a reason we have the social support programs. Everybody says, oh, but we don't need to be feeding these poor people and these immigrants and all of this. That's our money. Well, here's the deal, buddy. Is it worth the investment for your security, for your friends and family? I think it is. I think it's a worthwhile investment to make sure that every human being inside our jurisdiction has their basic essential needs. In my opinion, the most patriotic thing anyone can ever say or do is to take care of another person, an animal, or the world we leave to our kids. There is nothing more patriotic than that.
I agree.
Because you are upholding those constitutional rights that keep us alive at that point and keep us safe. I want even if it means that a few criminals get a free meal, I'd rather they got the free meal than for nobody to get a meal. So I see a lot of stupidity out there with regard to people thinking about the social support programs, how we deal with our public servants, and how they are backwards in their perspective of what constitutionalism is. It's not about upholding your rights. It's about upholding the rights of others mutually. So when those First Amendment auditors, when they go to those cops and they start harassing them, that's unconstitutional behavior. And they'll sit there and they'll tell you, well, I'm upholding the Constitution. I'm doing a First Amendment. No, you're not. You're harassing somebody that doesn't have, if you have reason to believe they're committing a crime, well, keep your mouth shut and collect the evidence. Because that's what a First Amendment audit is. You keep your mouth shut. You're investigating in secret, and then you're going to build a legal case or a criminal complaint, and then you're going to take it to an official with the expectation that official is not going to give it due process. And then you're going to get criminal information against that official, and then the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next thing you know, you've expired all of the authorities having jurisdiction. You have a street cop, a police chief, a deputy, the sheriff, a judge, the magistrate, the district attorney, the chief magistrate, the chief justice of the state, the attorney general of the state, the FBI agent, the FBI field office special agent in charge, the SAC, and then the federal district attorney. And you've got all of them balled up in a seditious conspiracy because this is exactly how the Confederates did it. These cases would come up through the chains of authority. These people are reporting all of these officials, and they're going from one jurisdiction to the higher jurisdiction to the higher jurisdiction. These are called the AHJs, the authority having jurisdiction. In order for you to get to the grand jury, technically, as long as you don't perceive any conflicts of interest, or you don't cite any conflicts of interest, you have to expire the authorities having jurisdiction. Okay? That means all your law enforcement judicial officers locally, at the state, and at the federal, and now you have access to the federal grand juries. And the Democrats and Republicans have set a condition in law where you cannot access the grand jury without license or permit. And the clerk is going to be the first one to demonstrate that to you. And you have to stop them. You have to stop them as soon as they do it. So, this is why I encourage people to read the document, the very first one on the brief links that I'm going to send you again here. It's called Ministers of Justice and Private Prosecutors. This is your notice to the clerk. This is your notice to anyone who tries to tamper with you and your right to private prosecution. You are not obligated to say a fucking thing to anybody, and you keep your mouth shut. You don't tell them what you're reporting to the grand jury. Period. Ever. End of story. If the judge says, no, I'm requiring you to do this, Your Honor, I'd like the record to show Your Honor has just solicited me to commit the crime of criminal communication tipping off. Okay? You have asked me to violate the statute regarding grand jury proceedings to be kept secret. And it's a crime for you to do that, Mr. Judge. Mr. Bailiff, please take the judge into custody. I am placing him under arrest and delivering him into your custody. Arrest is effective upon notice. When I hear people say things like, well, it's time for these people to go to the gallows and this, that, and the other. It's time to arrest them and all of this. Well, when you do that, number one, you make yourself a target that they can strike at. But this is how you do it, so you don't do that. Okay? Arrest is effective upon notice. Mr. Judge, in your private capacity, Tom Dicknuts, you're under arrest. Mr. Bailiff, I'm delivering the prisoner into your custody. Take him before the magistrate immediately. I will meet you at the magistrate court. And so that way they cannot say that you assaulted somebody. Okay? They cannot say that you unlawfully restrained someone. Right. Because you did it according to the way that the Supreme Court has held that warrantless arrest should be conducted by anyone. Okay? Whether it's a cop or a private citizen. And it applies to any breach of the peace, not just felonies. Okay? Not just felonies. 18 U.S.C. Section 4 is very clear, where it says that whoever having knowledge of the actual commission of a felony, which I've read into the application of the statute, and it does reach misdemeanors, must make the same known to an officer of the judicial or enforcement branch of government or the military. Okay? So when a cop makes an arrest, he must make that known to the courts. He must deliver that prisoner to the jailer, and then that information has to go to the district attorney. Nobody can just sit on criminal information, period. You
Right.
can't just sit on it. It has to be given due process. It must be processed. And if it's not being processed, somebody is committing a crime. And that's what the due process audit is about. You give a criminal complaint to a cop, you got to make sure he is doing what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to get your oath and your signature, take the information into record, give you a criminal report number so it can be referenced in the future. This is a tactic that I see used against people, reporting officials, is that they'll go up to a sheriff's clerk at the sheriff's department, and they'll have a criminal complaint against one of the deputies. And the clerk or whoever will say, okay, that's fine. I see your information. I see your exhibits. I got your signature on the oath. We're ready to go. We'll be in touch. Okay, thank you, sir. And you head out the door thinking everything's hunky-dory. And then you realize, I don't have a criminal report number. If there's not a criminal report number, there is no official record. I've had them try this with me. And that's exactly what happened. I was heading out the door, and I went, oh, shit, I don't have a criminal report. I turned around, I went back to the fucking clerk. And she looked at me, she was smirking. She was like, fuck. Because I caught her doing that. I said, no, you need to give me a criminal report number. How am I going to reference this case? How am I going to come back and make sure that you put all the correct evidence into record? How am I going to know that you did or did not forward that information to the district attorney? Okay. And then, she tried to come and on this, that, and the other. I said, look, go get your supervisor. Let's see if we can get the supervisor to rescue you from the mess you just got yourself into. Either that or I can dial 911 right now for tampering with a victim, witness, or informant and fraudulent and evidence. Tampering with evidence.
Right.
Fraudulent concealment. And then she gave me the criminal report number.
Right.
I sat there, I watched her at that point type everything into the system and get the number, and I wrote down the number.
Nice.
Okay, because that's what the due process audit is. It's like you're following up with all of the officials at every authority having jurisdiction to make sure that they're giving due process to your criminal complaints that were, brought forth based on the evidence from your First Amendment audit. Okay, the First Amendment audit is the collection, and the due process audit is the reporting and assuring due process. And if they don't, well, then you got their asses. And you can, and if nobody will take your criminal complaints, you can sue these people for violation of the Fair and Honest Practices Act. And that goes straight federal because they're violating an act of Congress.
Right.
From within a state actor's office. So the state cannot administer the proceedings. Another trick you can do, if you go to the federal courts against some of these people, you can name the defendants, the Blue Wall of Silence, the Bar Association, the political parties, and the United States. And what happens there is that immediately opens the door to the Court of Federal Claims, because now you have a claim against the United States. And as soon as you get in that proceeding, you file a Rule 24 intervention in defense of the United States, and you lay your criminal complaints. Okay? So now what you've done is you have taken the United States out of the group of criminals, and you've brought them over to your side as plaintiffs. So now the United States has an interest in the matter. And so now you are moving in qui tamper on behalf of the government. When you go to privately prosecute, so you're doing civil RICO or you're doing a private prosecution before the grand jury, you are actually a private attorney general moving in qui tam on behalf of the government, because the government is a victim in the matter. And it is disabled from defending itself. When we have, Alexander Hamilton warned George Washington, John Adams, and Benjamin Franklin of the quote-unquote viral rot of political parties, bar associations, and secret police organizations, private police organizations. And what he was warning them about then, we are suffering exactly what he predicted would happen. That's exactly what's happening right now. So, and this is why I say that, when you guys are dealing with official corruption, in the document I'm going to send you, there's another document called Common Federal Offenses, and these are statutes that I have cherry picked that I see broadly applicable to most of these official corruption cases, whether it's through the family court, traffic court, criminal court, whatever. Even dealing with organizations like CPS, Guardians Ad Litem, psychologists, anyone who is kind of a quasi-official or is operating in a quasi-official capacity. But everyone has to remember that the officer who deems himself to have jurisdiction where he has none, and none of them can commit crimes from their office, they do so at their own peril, meaning in a private capacity and not as an agent for the government. And they will try like hell to tell you, well, they have official immunity because they were occupying an an office. Well, that's why I'm also accusing them of 18 U.S.C. Section 641, unlawful conversion. They converted their office into an instrument of crime. They acted without jurisdiction, and they did so in a private capacity. And at the end of the day, you can say, Your Honor, do only lawful acts qualify for immunity? Get the fucking judge or the district attorney, get them to answer that question. Do unlawful acts qualify for immunity? And if they say yes, then you start proceedings to have them banished from public office for incompetence.
Right.
Because only lawful acts qualify for immunity. And a lot of people don't understand the issue of official immunity. Okay? I'll give you an example. You got a cop. He responds to a bank robbery. Okay? And a bank robber points a gun at him, and the cop shoots and kills him. Okay? And technically, the cop committed homicide. He killed another human being. Okay, but what made his action lawful? Why should he be immune for that? Because, well, he feared for his life. There is a maxim of law that says only actual necessity makes lawful that which is unlawful otherwise. Okay? I'll give you an example. Eating meat, eating the animals. All these meat eaters say, well, I gotta eat and this, that, and the other. But the problem is for you, buddy, is you don't have an actual need for it. So technically, they are committing an unlawful act, despite the fact that it's illegal. Okay? You got a father and his children riding through the mountains in the middle of the night in a blizzard, and his car breaks down, and they're going to freeze to death. So him and his kids take off. They come across a country house and nobody's home, so they break in the house, and they get warm. They feed each other, and they prevent themselves from dying. And the homeowner comes home and calls the cops, and the cops arrest him. Well, he's going to get off. He's going to get off those charges because only actual necessity makes lawful that which is unlawful otherwise.
Right.
If you would not want it done to you, you should not do it to others unless you have no choice. Okay? And it really is a matter of life and limb. All right?
You know, Gary, you are a wealth of information. I've got a podcast I got to be on here in 10 minutes.
Okay.
And my camera quit recording a bit ago, but I was able to get my laptop recording, so I have recorded most of our conversation. And I have your permission to share it on my YouTube channel?
Yeah.
Okay,
certainly,
great.
Certainly.
Great, thank you.
I would even say, if you want to, the only thing I ask is don't sell it.
No. I am.
Give it away for free.
I teach people meditation and yoga for free because it's what we need to be doing, and this would be the same concept.
No, wrong. You need to be teaching them law. You need to be teaching them how to privately prosecute, how to trap these people.
Right. Well, that's what I'm learning.
This is what the religions do. They rely on people's emotional trauma, and we're going to have a big pity party, and we're going to talk about everything except bringing them to justice.
Right.
We're going to teach you everything except your skills and rights to privately prosecute.
Right.
So no, I don't condone that at all. Keep that stuff in church. When we're dealing with these victims of official crime, which is pretty much every American citizen, no. We need to be teaching them and giving them the tools that they need to make them strong, so they are no longer victims on the defense, so they are hunters on the offense.
Right.
Okay. We don't need to make them focus on their hurt feelings. We need to give them something to make them feel like a bear.
Well, no, and that's what meditation actually does, is it empowers that individual.
I have never heard of meditation help take down a corrupt public official ever.
No, you're right, and this is why I'm talking with you now, is because you're able to help educate me, and I'm willing to bring that through to other people.
Time is of the essence. We don't have time for prayer meetings.
Right.
That's what this boils down to. Look at the state of the world right now.
Oh, yeah.
Look at the state of our government right now. They're giving immunity to felons. Do you know what that means? Do you know what that means? Do you have any idea what that subjects us to?
Oh,
that
absolutely.
Means that any official could come in our houses and shoot us dead. And they have immunity because they're official.
Yep.
This is what the Confederates were doing. This is not time for prayer meetings. This is not time for meditation. This is the time for private prosecutors to start hunting corrupt officials. That's what it's time for.
Oh,
that's what I teach people.
Yeah, I'm with you. Well, I think on the spiritual aspect of it, we have to empower the individual, but and then with that, we're able
The way
to.
you do that, you give a little kid that's been bullied, okay, and like there's a gang of bad guys that jump on him every time he goes to school. What do?
You
You
teach
give
him,
him a fucking pistol. You give him a pistol.
right? Yeah.
You don't say, well, let's go talk about your feelings. Let's go talk about how you feel about this. No, you say, no, son, here's a pistol, here's a baseball bat. Show me how you can break his fucking face.
Right.
That's what you do to the kid. And we cannot convert our country into a war zone. And I'm very sensitive to these kinds of sentiments. Only a fool would convert his own nation into a war zone. And I hear a lot of people say, well, it's time for us to get the militias together, it's time for us to get our guns together. And I say, no, you're not going to beat them that way. You're not going to beat them that way. They're going to bury you under the jail if that's what you try to do.
Right.
You know, I don't necessarily agree with a lot of the politics and opinions of a lot of these militia type folks. However, they're not imagining that the Democratic and Republican parties are a criminal organization. It's just they're blaming the government, which is an inanimate object.
Right. Well, hey, I'm sorry. I really have to go. I'm scheduled for. It's on somebody else's podcast. So,
Give me a
yeah. Thank you so much for your time.
Bye-bye. Yes, sir.
Bye.
Bye-bye.